It's as if now tents now are mostly you can see through tents now, right? Not see all the way through, but you can see light through most tents now because they're made out of nylons and other, right? There was a time when tents were made out of canvas. So I want you to imagine a Boy Scout jamboree out in the middle of a big field with thousands and thousands of tents, and only one of them has a lamp in it. How are you supposed to find the one with a lamp in it? All the tents look alike. They're this kind of dingy canvas. How am I going to know which one has the lamp in it unless somebody has poked a hole in that tent? There's a pinprick, or there's some way that light's going to get out. We've already been told that this word is light, the light of all people, right? So how's the light going to get out? What will be the pinprick is kind of the Sherlock Holmes question here. It's kind of the question that we go into the rest of the book with. How did people find the right tent? Because the language, the skedeo language in Greek of 114 is that the word became flesh and pitched a tent among us, right? So how do we find the right tent? It becomes the question for the rest of the book. And it answers it in two or three ways. One is through this word glory. Did you notice? And the word became flesh and lived among us, and we beheld his glory, glory as of an only begotten son, right? Glory is a light word, a light word. Remember last week in the Luke 2 story, we said, and the glory of the Lord shone round about them, and they were terrified, right? They were sore afraid. Glory is a light word throughout Scripture. The light is the sort of symbolic representation of God's glory. Remember in the Old Testament, in Exodus 33 and 34, when Moses shows up and is able to be with God, his face becomes so radiant that the people around him couldn't stand it without a veil, right? Light is God's glory, right? Well, so John gives us that clue and says, you know what? The people who are going to get this are the people who find access to those moments when glory shines out, right? When Jesus does things that bring glory into view. And I want to go to John 2:1, just as the first version of that. We aren't going to be able to read all of them. There are 7 main ones, but we're going to read this one just because it's the first and it has some of the language involved in the detective work. John 2:1, it's the wedding at Cana. Of all things, a wedding where Jesus supplies the beverage. And let's listen to it so we can remember together the story. And then I'm especially going to ask you to focus on the wrap-up in verses 10 and 11. Actually, verse 11. So, on the 3rd day, there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. And Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine gave out, an embarrassing moment for the hosts, the mother of Jesus said to Jesus, they have no wine. And Jesus said to her, woman, what concern is that to you and me? My hour has not yet come. The hour for what? His mother said to the servants, do whatever he tells you. Now standing there were 6 stone water jars for the Jewish rites of purification, each holding 20 or 30 gallons. Jesus said to them, fill the jars with water. They filled them up to the brim. He said to them, now draw some out and take it to the chief steward. So they took it. When the steward tasted the water that had become wine and did not know where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew, the steward called the bridegroom and said to him, wow, everyone serves the good wine first and then the inferior wine after the guests have become drunk. But you've kept the good wine for last. And then I want you to look at verse 11, because if you remember the wedding at Cana, that's the part you remember. You probably don't remember the next verse, which is not a part of the story particularly. This is John's editorial comment. Jesus did this, the first of his signs, in Cana of Galilee, and revealed his glory. The Word became flesh and lived among us, and we beheld his glory, revealed his glory. Not only did they kind of suss out his glory, Jesus, it sounds like, acted in order to put a pinprick in the tent, right? In order to show light through. Jesus did this little thing, this nice thing at a wedding. And then what happened? Jesus did this first of his signs in Cana and Galilee, revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. Turns out that believing in him is the ding, 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 ding of getting the mystery of incarnation. It's going to be that way all the way through this book. Remember in John 3:16, held up in end zones and on shirts and keychains, that whosoever believeth in him shall not perish, but shall have ever. Belief is going to be the currency of connection in the Gospel of John. It's going to be the people who ding, 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 see that the Word was made flesh and this was the right flesh. This is the tent we've been looking for, right? And we get our first version of that in chapter 2 with the wedding at Cana in Galilee. Seems a mundane kind of miracle. It doesn't, it doesn't exactly bring somebody out from the dead or make them able to see. There are going to be other ones that do that, right? But this one opens the door with this glorious moment in Cana, and the disciples see through the tent. There are 7 of these. In John, they're called signs. Not miracles, signs. And they're sort of one after another. The next one is going to be in chapter 4. Jesus healing an official's son in chapter 4. And verse 46. And then the next is going to be chapter 5, where Jesus heals on the Sabbath at the pool of Bethesda, right? And then they're going to go on to all the way through to the resurrection of Lazarus, the raising of Lazarus. I do want to go to the end of the one in chapter 2, though, chapter 4. The last words of the one is in chapter 4. The father realized that this was the hour when Jesus had said to him, "Your sons will live." Remember, this is Jesus healing the official's son. And he does it from a distance. And he consents to healing the son. And when the father gets home, he said, "Let's synchronize our watches." And it turns out that right at the time that Jesus said he shall live was when the kid got better, right? And I want you to see what comes right after it. So he himself believed along with his whole household, right? Signs prompt belief because they show glory. They identify the one who's got God inside, the Word inside, right? And the blessed thing is, how many people have been ruined by this sense that body is bad and spirit is good in the history of Christianity, right? This is a common belief throughout the history of Christianity that the spiritual is good, the flesh is bad, right? The spirit is willing, the flesh is weak. Some of it comes from scriptural sayings. But in the Gospel of John, it actually doesn't quite work to say the good stuff is inside the shabby tent, because the flesh actually does the wonders, right? God has come and inhabited flesh. The Word became flesh. It didn't say the Word picked up some flesh and put it around him. Do you see? That the skin is a part of the God made human, right? And that's an important thing to say, because a lot of people have been ruined by thinking that their body is bad and all that's good about them is their spirit. So if I can just get out of this body, suicide is used by some. Other forms of self-destruction are used by some. Jesus, in the Word coming to be among us, Word became flesh, which meant the whole business of being human was a part of who he was, right?